Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. I'm Michael Chabot, and I'm here to tell you that there will always be challenges in life, and in some cases, like mine, tragedies. But human beings are resilient. All you need to do is make a decision today. Follow me on this journey to hope, and together we will live, we will learn, and we will grow. And hopefully, we will find some hope in every day. Welcome to my journey to hope. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of my journey to hope. This is Michael Chabot. I want to talk to you about something today called Imposter Syndrome. And it's funny because this word has come up a lot in a lot of my conversations recently. And I've heard other people talk about it in some books I've read and some other podcasts that I listen to. And I just thought it was interesting. And I have some stuff to read to you. But before I do that, I want to talk about, what it is for me and how I've experienced it. And then I'll talk to you more about it. And that is, for many years I was very successful. And at the end of the year, there are awards, there's President's Club trips, there's bonuses, there's all these things. And, my bosses, my colleagues, my friends would be like, "Oh man, so awesome. You're so amazing." And in my head, I would think, yeah, not really. I just got lucky. Like, I was lucky. It came to me. It was a fluke. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it next year. I don't know how I'm going to repeat what I just did. It's not me. I didn't get here because of me. I just got lucky. And I'm wondering, before we get into this, if any of you feel this way. Do you feel like an imposter? Do you feel like a fraud? Do you feel like what you're achieving in life or what you've achieved in life is not because of who you are, but because of luck? It's interesting. People like Maya Angelou, people like Albert Einstein suffered from imposter syndrome. There's many, many people at high levels that suffer from this. So what I want to do is just read you a couple things here real quick. So it says imposter syndrome is a term that was first used by psychologists Suzanne Imes and Pauline Rose Clance in the 1970s when the concept of imposter syndrome was introduced. It was originally thought to apply mostly to high-achieving women, which I thought was interesting. Since then, it has been recognized as far more widely experienced, and it is estimated that 70% of people will experience at least one episode of this phenomenon in their lives. 70% of people feel like imposters. Why? Well, a lot of it goes back to our subconscious. It goes back to the root inside of us that was given to us that either we didn't feel loved, not enough love. It's interesting. I've been studying so much about the mind and the brain and the subconscious. And it's interesting, right? Like a man who suffered from obesity, he became 600 pounds because when he was a baby, every time he ate, he threw up and he spit up and it upset his mother. And that's all he heard as a child growing up was about those stories. And so what did he equate? What does his brain equate to? Well, make mommy happy if you eat and continue to eat and eat and eat and eat, right? It's interesting. The brain is so powerful. The mind is amazing. So let's talk about what is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome refers to an internal experience of believing that you are not as competent as others perceive you to be. While this definition is usually narrowly applied to intelligence and achievement, it has links to perfectionism and the social context. Now, I'll pause there for a minute and tell you that when I read that, I was like, okay, makes sense. I've been a perfectionist my entire life. And finally this year, I feel like I've been able to liberate myself from being a perfectionist and always having to be perfect and instead just striving for greatness, right? That's something that I can do. I can strive to be great, which means putting in 100% of my effort into something that I want to set out to accomplish. Not being perfect, knowing that there will be mistakes, but that I'm going to give it my all and take the moments where I make mistakes to learn from, which then will help me achieve my greatness. So, again, it says, to put it simply, it is the experience of feeling like a phony. You feel as though at any moment you're going to be found out as a fraud, like you don't belong where you are and you only got there through dumb luck. While imposter syndrome is not a recognized disorder, it is not uncommon. So again, it's funny. I love the fact that they use the word fraud in this article because that's how I felt so many times. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be found out. I don't belong here. I'm not smart enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not charismatic enough, right? I know that we all, at some point in our lives, suffer from a little bit of this imposter syndrome. And it's interesting because in this article, it says that there's an overlap between imposter syndrome and social anxiety. And it makes sense. And here I'll read to you what it says. It's easy to see how imposter syndrome and social anxiety may overlap. A person with social anxiety disorder may feel as though they don't belong in social or performance situations. You might be in a conversation with someone and feel as though they are going to discover your social incompetence. You might be delivering a presentation and feel as though you just need to get through it before anybody realizes you really don't belong here. It's interesting because, as I talk about all the time, I coach, 14 and 13-year-olds in travel hockey, ice hockey, and I tell them all the time, like, gentlemen, you guys tried out for this team. You earned a spot here, right? You belong. So if we as coaches are criticizing you, during practice and helping you and teaching you, it's not because we don't like you. It's constructive criticism, gentlemen. We're trying to make you better players, but you're here and you belong. So own that, feel that, right? Step into your greatness, as I like to say. All right, let's talk about some factors contributing to imposter syndrome. We know that certain factors can contribute to the more general experience of imposter syndrome. For example, you might have come from a family that highly valued achievement and had parents who flipped back and forth between offering praise and being critical. We also know that entering a new role can trigger imposter syndrome. For example, starting college or university might leave you feeling as though you don't belong and you are not capable. Now, I will tell you, that part resonates with me a ton. And I love my parents. They're amazing parents. But I came from a family that highly valued achievement and for sure flipped back and forth between offering praise and being critical. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us as parents do that, right? Because we want what's best for our kids. And, with my kids, I've learned to back off. Yes, I push them hard. Yes, I want them to achieve and be the best that they can be to their potential that's inside them. But I've also learned to understand that, look, they're not me. They're individuals. They have to make and do their own things. And my job is just to guide them. Somebody gave me this really great analogy. All of us have gone bowling. And you know those bumpers that some of you listening need to have, or otherwise you throw gutter balls? Come on, you guys know who you are out there. You know who you are. And I think parenting is like that. We've got to be the bumpers and let our kids kind of bounce in that lane, right? We've got to give them the freedom to move within that lane. And it's been hard for me, but I've learned to do that, especially with my son. I always apologize to my oldest daughter because I was hardest on her, because there's no manual that comes with being a parent. We all know this, right? You learn as you go. And I definitely tell her all the time, like, hey, I'm really sorry. I know I pushed you so hard, and damn, I'm so proud of her or proud of you. And as a side note, I'm extremely proud of the woman she's becoming. she'll achieve far more than I will in my life, and she's just an amazing human being. And my point is remember that if you're a parent and you have kids, try and be the bumpers on the bowling lane. Let them operate in that lane. Let them find their way. I think that'll help them feel like they belong. All right, so let's talk about some of the negative effects of imposter syndrome. It says, while for some people imposter syndrome can fuel feelings of motivation to achieve, this usually comes at a cost in the form of constant anxiety. You might over-prepare or work much harder than necessary to make sure that nobody finds out that you're a fraud. This sets up a vicious cycle in which you think the only reason you survived that class presentation was that you stayed up all night rehearsing, or you think the only reason you got through that party or family gathering was that you memorized details about all the guests so that you would always have ideas for small talk. The problem with imposter syndrome is that the experience of doing well at something does nothing to change your beliefs. Even though you might sail through a performance or have lunch with coworkers, the thought still nags in your head. What gives me the right to be here? The more you accomplish, the more you just feel like a fraud. It's as though you can't internalize your experiences of success. And here's what I'll say. I had the opportunity of talking to an amazing guy named Julian Rosen, and he's doing some amazing things in this space. And I hope to have him on this show here in the near future. He and I talked about it doesn't matter what you achieve. We all have that root issue, right? It's whatever has been planted, unfortunately, by our parents or somebody in our life when we were young. And, think of it like this. If you're weeding a garden and you just continue to cut the weeds off at the tops or right to the soil, it'll keep growing back until you get to the root. And that's what that is saying there is even if you get through it, even if you do the work, sometimes you got to take a pause and do the internal work, not the external work, but the internal work that I talk about to get to the root. That's the gift my daughter gave me, guys. Her gift is that she made me open up my eyes. She made me look internally and do the work to get to the root. Because I know that, look, I come from a family of high achievers and workaholics, and everybody's always striving, and not to the fault of my parents, but as a child, I didn't feel loved. That's the truth. I'm opening up here and I'm telling you guys, I didn't feel loved. And so I thought if I could achieve and be successful and do all those things, I would get love. I thought money would make me feel loved. I thought women would make me feel loved, alcohol, cars, you name it. And for those of us listening that are adults, we know that none of those things can give you happiness, can give you love. You have to love yourself first. And once you love yourself, then you can take in love from everybody else. So, just a little bit more of peeling back the layer of onions here for me, of the onion, I should say. Let's go back to what we were talking about, the negative effects of imposter syndrome. And it says, this makes sense in terms of social anxiety. If you received early feedback that you were not good at social or performance situations, your core beliefs about yourself are so strong that they don't change even when there is evidence to the contrary. If you do well, it must be the result of luck because a socially incompetent person just doesn't belong. Eventually, these feelings worsen anxiety and may lead to depression. People who experience imposter syndrome also tend not to talk about how they are feeling with anybody and suffer in silence, just as those do with social anxiety disorder. And again, dun da da da, it's like the horns are going off because this is exactly what I went through. 100%. Didn't matter if I was top in my field and made X amount of money and did this and did that. It's that nagging feeling inside. It's why alcoholics drink and drug addicts shoot up. It's that nagging feeling. It gnaws at you. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved. I'm unloved. I don't belong. I'm lucky. There's no way I could be doing this. I mean, I listened to something the other day, a podcast episode about, this guy who basically owned like 3/4 of all the property in the city of London. And yet, because of his root belief that he was unlovable, right, was a freaking raging alcoholic and drove everybody away from him because he didn't feel he was lovable. So, instead of proving to himself over and over that he wasn't, he just pushed it away and he used alcohol. So, I say this all the time, we make life difficult. It's not that difficult. We as human beings complicate the hell out of it. We make it difficult. There are formulas. So let's talk about some of the ways to get past imposter syndrome. It says to get past it, you need to start asking yourself some hard questions. They might include things such as the following. What core beliefs do I hold about myself? Do I believe I am worthy of love as I am? Must I be perfect for others to approve of me? And God, I love this, right? Because, it's like, it's just what I said. I did this amazing interview the other day with somebody, and we talked about core beliefs. We talked about core beliefs and core values, and how if you make every decision in your life tied to your core values and beliefs, it makes making decisions pretty easy. And making the right decisions because it's tied to your values and beliefs, right? Do I believe I'm worthy of love as I am, right? Do you say, ugh, I'm a fat ass, or ugh, I'm too short, or ugh, this is wrong, or that's wrong? You are lovable. You are lovable. It's funny. Andy Frisella, he always talks about, there's a movement, you are enough. And he's like, that's bullshit, and I agree and disagree. Like, you are enough as long as you do the work, right? Like, if you do the work, the internal work, and you're putting your effort into every day, and you're living life, and you're living in gratitude, and all the things we talk about, then you're enough. You are enough. Embrace who you are. It doesn't matter if you're short, unattractive, tall, unattractive, round, unattractive, whatever it is, super attractive, there is greatness inside of you. And for somebody, you are their everything. And you are enough for yourself. But I understand what Andy is saying is like, you're not just enough by existing. Here's something else that I love that I'll share from somebody else that I follow. The law of Goya. He talks about the law of attraction, right? And he's like, look, but then there's also the law of Goya. And that means get off your ass. You're not going to just sit at home and manifest and, meditate and do vision boards and think you're going to, attract millions of dollars in success and your perfect mate and all this shit. You got to get off your ass and do the work. You've got to get off your ass and do the work. It's not going to come to you. You want a better body? Well, guess what? You got to go to the gym and work out, and you got to eat healthy. You've got to make a commitment to yourself, and you've got to live with that. You've got to keep it, I should say, and live up to it. Right? You want to be successful? You want to make a lot of money? You got to work. You got to take calls at night when you're tired and you want to lay on the couch, or you got to work on that project on the side like we talk about. If you're a kid listening to this and you want to excel in sports or in school, guess what, guys? You got to do the work. You have finals coming up and you need to study for them? Do the work. Do the work. That's it. I'm going to have hats and t-shirts that say that. Do the work. Because it doesn't matter what it is. And no, here's the last bullet point, right? Must I be perfect for others to approve of me? Hell no. Would you agree that some of your favorite people that are your friends and your family and people that you care about, it's their imperfections that you love. It's the fact that they embrace them. Right? Embrace them. So here, I want to talk about this because this is so big for me. Perfectionism plays a significant role in imposter syndrome. You might think there is some perfect script for conversations and that you cannot say the wrong thing. You probably have trouble asking for help from others and may procrastinate due to your own high standards. How often do you put off making a phone call until the right time? And it's funny, like for me, man, this is big in my life, right? Like, oh, I'll do it when it's perfect, or I'm not ready to make that call yet because, guys, that's why I take the cold showers. They're not fun. They're uncomfortable. And yes, you get a huge high from taking it. Your endorphins just kick in and it's amazing. But I do it because then I'm not scared to make phone calls, or I'm not trying to be perfect to make phone calls. I'm not thinking, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? I say the wrong thing on here all the time. I just correct myself and move forward. Embrace being imperfect. First of all, it gives you so much more freedom. You can breathe and exhale and be like, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I can just be me. I can be me. I can take off that mask and be me. And I know I said this a million times, and I'll say it to the end of my life. This is the gift that Gabriella gave me. And I miss her every day, guys. I sat down the other day on Thursday, and I cried. And I cried hard because I was missing her desperately. But I've got to practice what I preach, and that is I knew that I had to connect with the pain, and I had to feel it and breathe through it and walk through that darkness so that I could walk back into the light. And when I left to go to the office, I felt better. I still felt a little heaviness from the cry, but it helped me. It helped me get in touch with my daughter, with my feelings, and remember why I'm here and what I'm doing and what the message is. So let's talk about some things that you can do to move past these feelings. It says to move past these feelings, you need to become comfortable confronting some of those deeply ingrained beliefs that you hold about yourself. The root. This can be hard because you might not even realize that you hold them. But here are some techniques you can use. Share your feelings. Talk to other people about how you're feeling. These irrational beliefs tend to fester when they are hidden and not talked about. Guess what? That's what this podcast does for me. I'm sharing my feelings with you guys who I'm so grateful that you take the time out of your busy day to listen. Focus on others. While this might feel counterintuitive, try to help others in the same situation as you. If you see someone who seems awkward or alone, ask that person a question to bring him or her into the group. As you practice your skills, you will build confidence in your own abilities. And all this means, guys, is serve others. Help and serve others. Take a moment to brighten somebody else's day. You don't know the shit they're going through. You don't know. You know, it's funny. My boss and I were talking the other day, and he made such a great point. Like we were on the phone, and some guy cut me off, and I was ranting and raving. And he says, I'm just going to say this. He goes, you never know, Michael. That guy could be rushing home to an emergency, to a tragedy. Something crazy might be going on in his life. And so my point is that just take a moment, help others. That's what I'm trying to do here, right? You're helping me by listening, and I'm trying to help you through my experience with my journey. So hopefully that you don't have to make the mistakes that I have. Next thing it says, assess your abilities. If you have long-held beliefs about your incompetence in social and performance situations, make a realistic assessment of your abilities. Write down your accomplishments and what you're good at, and compare that with your self-assessment. The other thing I found is ask your friends. Write your stuff and then go ask your friends, hey, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I need to improve on? Your friends will tell you the truth, and it's helpful. And if you're somebody listening, if a friend comes to you and asks, be honest with them. You don't have to be mean or critical, but be honest with them. It'll help them. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses because we're human beings. I love this one. Take baby steps. Don't focus on doing things perfectly, but rather do things reasonably well and reward yourself for taking action. For example, in a group conversation, offer an opinion or share a story about yourself. I love it. Reward yourself for taking action. That's the key. Take action. Be in motion. Question your thoughts. As you start to assess your abilities and take baby steps, question whether your thoughts are rational. Does it make sense that you're a fraud, given everything that you know? No. It's bullshit. It's your brain trying to keep you safe, trying to protect you, trying to swaddle you in your baby blanket. Stop comparing. We all do this. Every time you compare yourself to others in a social situation, you'll find some fault with yourself that fuels the feeling of not being good enough or not belonging. Instead, during conversations, focus on listening to what the other person is saying. Be genuinely interested in learning more. Listen, guys, I just came from a few weeks ago an event that Gerard Adams put on. And look him up. I've talked about him in other posts before. He formed a company called Elite Daily, sold it for $50 million at 30 years old, formed something else called Leaders Create Leaders, where he goes around and talks to all these great people who've started these amazing companies and have achieved super success so that others can learn. And his mission in life is creating other leaders. So I went to this event with about 35 other people. I was one of the oldest people in the room by at least 20 years. I was intimidated as a mofo, right? And at first I had imposter syndrome and I was comparing myself and I was like, dude, just shut the hell up to that voice in my head, that villain. Just be here in the moment. Soak in what you can. Stop comparing yourself. Just be comfortable. Just open up. And that's what it says, right? Just be genuinely interested. And that's what I said to myself. You know what? There's a lot to learn here. Just open yourself. Be open to learning. And share what you know you're good at and what you could bring to the table and serve. Serve them. That's it. Right? Now, was that hard? It's not that complicated, is it? But what do? We complicate it as human beings. We make things difficult. We make it difficult. So, there's a couple more things on the list, but, I think I've covered most of them. And, again, imposter syndrome or not, social anxiety or not, it all goes back to that root, right? We all have things inside of us, things that come from our childhood scars, from parents, from relatives, from friends, from babysitters, teachers, coaches, right? You name it. Stop cutting the weeds off at the top of the soil. You got to dig deep and get to the root. And when you do that, I promise you, you'll create new habits, you'll form new patterns, and you'll find happiness and peace in your life. And that really, guys, is all we want, right? Why do we strive for money and fame and success? Because we think it'll find us peace and fulfillment. We think we'll be fulfilled. But that's not the case. The only way to find fulfillment is to get to the root and do the frickin' work. That's it. I read something interesting that said, most people who become movie stars do it because they feel unfulfilled and unworthy of love. And they just think, well, if I become a movie star, a mega movie star, then people will have to like me. They'll love me. But guess what? Then they feel imposter syndrome because they say they don't love me. They love that version of me on the screen, right? How exhausting is that? How exhausting is that? So I got a little homework for you. Send me a message, comment, go to my website, myjourneytohope.com, my Instagram, myjourneytohope, and remember it's the number 2, myjourneytohope. Let me know if you've ever suffered for some of these things, some imposter syndrome, if you've achieved high amounts of success and you feel like you're not worthy of it, or you have dreams and you're afraid to follow them because you feel like you're not worthy. I want to help you. I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now and listen to me for a moment. You are worthy. You are enough. There is greatness inside of you. And you can do it. You can do it. It's going to take work, but you can do it. And as I always do, I'll leave you with this. This is for my baby girl, Gabriella. I love you so much. And I miss you very much, darling.